When we wander through the misty valleys of the Great Smoky Mountains, we're walking in the footsteps of those who carved out a life in these rugged hills generations ago. Today we're exploring the story of one such family who lived here at the Noah Ogle homestead. Built almost 150 years ago, this place has been preserved by the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, giving us a remarkable opportunity to visit a time capsule nestled in these ancient mountains. The journey begins in the early 1800s, when William Ogle and his wife Martha Husky became some of the first white settlers in what would later become Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Back then, Gatlinburg was known as White Oak Flats and was nothing more than a remote backwoods community where the Ogle clan put down roots that still run deep through Sevier County today. But the story I'm sharing today centers on their descendant, Noah Wilson Ogle, who built this cabin. Noah, or Bud as he was known better in his day, was born in 1863, and in February of 1883, he married Lucinda Bradley. Shortly after their wedding, Noah started work on a new home for the two of them, and he built this very cabin, which we're going to take a closer look at today. The excellent craftsmanship here has weathered 140 years of mountain weather, and if you pay close attention to the details, you can see why the design of this place is genius for its location and this landscape. At the ends of the cabin, we see these hand-hewn logs which are joined with half dovetail notches. But what makes this home even more unique is its saddlebag design, which helps us to understand how these homes evolved over time. When the family first started building here, they needed shelter that could be assembled as quickly as possible in order to prepare for the winter. So their first log cabin was constructed in the 1880s, shortly after their wedding. But as the family grew, they would need more space. So according to the records here, about 5 years after this first cabin was built, Noah added a second cabin. Now, this second cabin was positioned just 5 feet from the first, and what they did was situated it in a way where there would be a shared central chimney between the two cabins, and that's what created what's known as the saddlebag style house, because it kind of looks like a saddlebag. And what's interesting is that this design was common across the South in this era. However, this is one of the very few remaining examples here in the Smoky Mountains. Stepping inside these cabins, you can start to imagine what life was like here for the Ogle family. And Lucinda, who I learned was a respected midwife in this section of the mountains, delivered countless babies throughout her community. But at that same time, she was raising 9 children of her own in these 2 small cabins. That's a lot of people to live in spaces this small, so the family adapted the home to accommodate their large brood. In each cabin, there was a sleeping loft, which you would reach by climbing a ladder at bedtime. And I'm not sure about this particular family, but in many cases back then, the boys and the girls would have had separate sleeping areas, the girls with their mother and the boys with their father. Now, also to create more space, there are large porches that span both the front and the back of the house, creating outdoor living space. And when I say living space, this was really where living would have happened. Out here, the family could gather in the shade on the hot days. It would also give them protection on the rainy days. So whenever they weren't farming, the family was likely spending a lot of time together on the front or the back porch of this house, where the girls would have gathered for activities like sewing, which was a very regular thing to happen here because they had to produce all of their own clothes back then. But on these porches, they'd also do things like cooking and canning, because a big focus of the women's work was to can and pickle and salt and smoke and preserve all the things that were being grown or caught to prepare them for the winter months. And all of that activity likely happened right here on these porches. So speaking of farming, let's learn more about Noah's farm. If we take a look at the land, it's actually pretty remarkable that he was able to make a living and support his family here at all. He had 400 acres. However, only a small portion of it was actually farmable, and this land is so rocky and hilly that in 1929, a land assessor declared that it was unsuitable for farming. Yet somehow the Ogles survived on this farm anyway. In order to farm this rocky terrain, they would have had to clear boulders and rocks by hand, and Noah did just that. In his small and rocky fields, he grew corn, but then he also discovered that apples did well here, so he also maintained a sizable apple orchard. He sold crops to his neighbors and sent excess to markets as far away as Knoxville. Speaking of the farm, let's take a look at the barn, which is one of the most impressive remnants from the Ogle farm. And it's not just any barn, this is a 4-pen barn. And while these were once really common in this area, this is the only one of its kind that still remains today within the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So it has 4 sections inside, each one is about 11 feet square, and then there are 2 central halls running through the barn. And Noah Ogle was nothing if not resourceful, so even his barn served multiple purposes for the Ogle family. Of course, it was used for housing his own livestock and storing his corn crops, but the barn also provided extra income. Back in Noah's time, this was a rocky sled road that passed right in front of this house, and travelers who came along that road would often need to stop here to feed and water their stock at Noah's barn, so they would pay him in return for that. Noah lived out his days here at his farm in the Smoky Mountains until he passed away in 1913. His wife Lucinda continued living on here with her adult children until she passed away in 1938. Not long after, this property, like many others in these mountains, was acquired by the federal government to create the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. In 1977, the Ogle House and Barn were added to the National Register of Historic Places. And thanks to the quality of the original construction and the preservation efforts of the National Park Service, we can walk in the footsteps of the Ogle family today. If you'd like to visit this remarkable piece of mountain history for yourself, you can find the farm and nature trail inside the Great Smoky Mountains National Park off the Cherokee Orchard entrance near Gatlinburg, and I'll link more info about that below. Visiting this farm today, it truly feels like you've taken a step back into the past, giving us an opportunity to consider the hands that shaped these logs, the children who grew up within these walls, and the innovation and perseverance that was required to build a life in these beautiful but unforgiving mountains. This place is a powerful reminder of the spirit of the people who made the Smoky Mountains their home, leaving behind a legacy that continues to fascinate us more than a century later.